Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. This week is a very personal episode because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about being almost homeless to now. This week, I've bought my first home. When I was 21, I was fresh out of university. I had just lost a job, and so naturally, that was the perfect time for my mother to get quite seriously ill. And in her sick state, I ended up having to pay the mortgage and the rent. Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. This week is a very personal episode because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how I was almost homeless, and this week I have just bought my first home. So, as I've mentioned in passing a few times in this blog, when I was 21, fresh out of university, I just lost my sort of first job post university, and my mum got sick. She had a thinning of the blood vessels in her brain, and this meant that she had sort of a 20-minute memory. And we completely fell through the welfare system. Most people who saw her did not see her for longer than 20 minutes and didn't realize that she wouldn't retain any information that they'd given her. She was having fits and seizures, most often at night. And I, as a 21-year-old, was left having to pay the mortgage and food, bills for her and my younger sister, and we completely sort of fell through the system. And some years later, 10 plus years later, now I'm sat here in London in a place that I own, and obviously have been reflecting on how do you get from one to the other. Now, I'm very aware of the fact that I obviously have some sort of survivorship bias. I always think that, hey, I did this thing and therefore anybody can do it. But obviously, that's not the case. I think the truth is that there are a lot of people in the world who are quietly suffering right now. They're really struggling. They're in exactly the same situation. They're caring for their parents whilst also having to make a living. And those people, most of them, you'll never hear their stories. So next time somebody mentions something like this to you, just bear in mind that they're probably going through a really hard time. But I was trying to think about what life lessons this give me. I often say it's quite a good thing, I think, in a weird way for me, because I think I was maybe a bit of a softer person. I was always quite a smart person, but maybe I was a soft person. I wasn't as driven. And then this horrible thing that happened to me, of course, did kind of give me that drive and bite and will to sort of carry myself on. So the first thing I wanted to say was that the system might fail you, but don't fail yourself. All systems or political systems or welfare systems, they inherently will fail because it's very, very difficult to affect a large group of people at a distance through time because you enact something and you don't know the consequences until later. And so inevitably what benefits one set of people will hurt another set of people. And I don't have any sort of hard feelings towards like the UK government or anything like that. I've worked with them quite a bit since. People do fall through the cracks. It is a thing that happens. And it's very easy in that kind of situation where every day is horrible and stressful, and the next day is going to be horrible and stressful, and the next day, and this is going to be something that happens over a long period of time where every day is like that for months and years, in my case, to blame the system and get angry. And of course that happened, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it wastes a lot of time and energy being angry with the world when all you can do is try your best and get on with things. And so the system might fail you, but don't fail yourself. The second thing was just that nothing that you own is worth anything. That's probably the first most practical thing I could think of when I was thinking about this blog. Was like, when you look in your house now, imagine you've got no income for 6 months. How are you going to pay the rent? Nothing you own is worth anything. And okay, maybe you can sell some stuff on eBay or Amazon or Vinted, which now you have to pay tax on, which is, not the case when I was in this situation. You could probably do some sneaky side business and nobody was taking that money from you. but nothing you own is worth anything. Maybe you can pay the bills for a couple of months, and then that's it. And most of the things that are worth anything, they're worth something because if you sell them, it might actually cost you money. So your car is probably the thing that you would think about selling if you own a car. But then if you sell your car, you lose your mobility, you lose job prospects because of the car. Maybe you could sell a nice car and get a cheaper car. That would be a thing to do. And most of the appliances in your home, back in the 2010s, we had this weird situation where people will always bemoaning that people on job seekers had these huge TVs, but even a huge TV is only worth a couple of £1,000. It's not really worth that much. You get rid of that, you don't have any entertainment. All day you're looking for jobs or you're doing anything, you have no entertainment. And so all of these things, while they might not be 100% necessary to living, they can make a big difference in your life. So yeah, nothing that you own is worth anything. Obviously, in order to safeguard against a situation where you suddenly got no income, you've got to live within your means. Don't depend on your overdraft. Don't depend on loans to get by on a day-to-day situation. Buy the things that you can afford. Be sensible with your money. And obviously now, in the meantime, I've invested in things like stocks and gold, other things where I could potentially sell those things very quickly if I needed money, and I've at least got something, because obviously cash in the bank degrades because of inflation. The third thing is just that most awful things sort of happen slowly. Every day is sort of despair. And in that situation where every day is crap, you really need to celebrate little wins. And I mean, little wins can be really small, like, hey, in my case, I started a business doing video editing for clients internationally, which back in 2010, 2012 was somewhat unusual. It wasn't the world that we're living in now. So with my laptop, I was able to make a living, and I was relatively cheap. I was literally in competition with people from, third world countries. And I used to say that, hey, I need to edit every day so that I can eat. And that was quite literally true. And so if I got jobs done and I got a little client, even if it was only like 150 quid for an editing job, I would celebrate, and maybe I'd get a beer, or maybe I'd go and get a meal deal or something. But in that situation that is ongoing and the pressure is huge and you've got huge demands to meet, then celebrate little wins. Want to move forward a little bit. So a couple of years into running a business gets good, gets very profitable. I'm able to hire people. I had too many people, too short. I thought, hey, I've kind of made this. I'm making money. This is amazing. And now I really want to expand my business. But one of the things I would say is, like, celebrate sustainability. Don't celebrate a sudden uptick, because it takes just as much effort to sustain that level of success as it does to get there. I think this is probably one of the most common mistakes I see business owners making, is that they get to a certain level and then they start thinking about this, but actually it might take a while. Just to stay in the same position takes the same amount of effort. And I think of it a bit like any sort of relationship. You build a relationship over time, but then you also have to put in an amount of effort to sustain that relationship before you could take it, to the next stage. And so don't change your behavior too quickly. In my case, I didn't go and then suddenly start buying 5-star dinners or anything for years later. Even though I had a successful company and, I was employing people, I was still eating canned food every day, and my food budget was really small. I lived very, very frugally for a long time because I still suspected that at any moment, I could go back down. And that was the case. Running a business and running an agency is a bit feast and famine for the first couple of years. So don't celebrate sort of a big win or anything. Your life hasn't changed at that point. Only to celebrate that when that becomes sort of the norm for a while. The fourth thing was just in that situation where I'm running a business now and I'm starting to make money. My main priority was getting the most out of myself and figuring out what am I good at, what's my core skill. I feel like a lot of people that I met at this time, now I've got an office and I'm working with other freelancers and we're all having the same problems, which is really nice to share that, hey, it's not just me, everybody's going through the same stuff. So having a community is really important, but it also made me think that being good is a real myth. Like everybody thinks that being good at what they do is the key to success, to promotions, and to making more money, to be really, really good at what you do. And I don't think that's true at all. Obviously McDonald's is a famous example where, are they the best burger you've ever had? I hope not, but they do something very consistently. And I learned that, okay, at the time I was making corporate videos and corporate marketing, but I probably wasn't. Some of the stuff I did was really good, but I look back at some of that and think, God, this is crap. And you know, but I was very good at being a freelancer. I was very good at running a company. I was very good at communicating with clients. I was very good at setting up the system so that their expectations met their needs. And I was very good at learning. Skip forward a few years, I start going into manufacturing, and I was having a conversation with the guys in the office the other day about like sacrificial coatings and microns and how big a micron is and all this kind of stuff. And I still remember all that stuff, and I had to learn it very quickly. And today I learned about data very, very quickly. And so I learned that for me, adaptability and learning were my core strengths, and also sort of communication and talking with people, and less so maybe the actual doing of things, but that was still a valuable skill. I could still find somebody who would help me on the doing side of things. Although I was very hands-on, I always did most of it myself. The next point is just that pride can be very costly. So when I look back at like how did I get from sort of a successful business to a really successful business, the main thing that happened was obviously my mom got better. I'd like to say loads of people always ask me this when I talk about this. So she got better, and that sorted the problem. She was able to go back to work. We were able to get some help. At this point, I'm making money. And at that point, I was able to relax a lot more. When I relaxed and the situation wasn't as desperate, like naturally I became more successful because I wasn't like, hey, I really need this. I think sometimes like desperation comes across to people. But when I was more relaxed, actually, I made loads more money. I literally like 3x'd the year that my mum got better, and I didn't have that pressure over me. And I do think it was just from one, I had a bit more of a portfolio, but two, I was able to relax. But one of the things that I reflected on is like a lot of my like major clients, a lot of them, I didn't know that they were major clients, like really big names. And in a lot of cases, like they came to me for a small job. I did a really good job on that. And then later they were like, hey, actually, I work for Vodafone. And I was like, I would like to do a thing for them, please. And even like I had some TV adverts for cars and stuff that were on international TVs because I helped somebody at last minute on a job for a local car dealership for like basically hardly any profit, but then it led to other things. And so pride can be very costly. Say yes to life, say yes to opportunities. You never know where those opportunities might lie. I also remember back before responsive design, I had one client that said, oh, we'd really like to do an app. Can you do any apps, Oliver? Do you know anybody for apps? And I was like, yes. I just said yes to anything at this point because I needed the money. And then like the second year of my business, like 115 grand was just on apps, which was like loads of money to me at the time. And I was able to find somebody who made apps really, really quickly and cost effectively and make a profit off of them. And then unfortunately responsive design came out and I didn't have that money anymore. But I also said yes to making websites, and today I know WordPress inside and out. I made once every web tech website brand new. I made that. I know how to make websites. And so if you say yes to something and you know that you're good at adaptability and learning, which is my core skills, I was then able to make money and open up new opportunities. And that wouldn't happen if I just sort of concentrated on one thing. So say yes to life. You never know where it might lead. And even years later, when I was working for a really, established company, they had a new opportunity coming in staffing, and they'd never done anything like that before, but they took a bit of a risk. And then 2/3 of their profit came from that. So you never know which direction life will take you, really. And so coming to the end of this video, and maybe quite a long video, I guess, from my point of view of being so poor that I couldn't afford heating versus eating was a real consideration for us as a family. Couldn't afford heating for like 18 months. I lived in a house, an end terrace house next to an alley, and it was freezing. I could quite literally see my breath. And I do hold a grudge to energy providers, because fuck you, energy providers. people shouldn't be in a situation where they're having to consider turning off the heating because they can't afford it. That's ridiculous. The fact that all people literally freeze to death every year because the prices are so high is disgusting to me. And so I do hold a grudge against those people. I went without food for 3 days because my mom, in the state that she was, where she kind of wasn't quite there, she just randomly like ate all the food one day that I came back, and I literally did not have the money to feed them and feed myself. And so I went like 2.5 days without food, and then somebody like left half of a sandwich one day, and I was like, can I have that sandwich, please? This is how dire the situation was, like really like quietly horrible. And at the same time, on LinkedIn, I'm seeing everybody is making loads of money, everybody's profitable, everybody's sat next to a model in a Lamborghini type of thing. And what separates me from them is that they've got a good network, they've got the right contacts, they've got some money in the bank. Oh, we only started our business with like 500K to begin with. I remember I was always reading books at this point, and there was one that said you should start your business with loans from friends and family, and even if you're only starting with like £50,000, that's a great starting point. And I was like, your friends and family have like 50 grand to give you? Who are these people? Will they adopt me? And what I learned is that you can get from that position of like poverty, like literally below the poverty line, to owning a place in London, which is really expensive, and being able to afford like Michelin star restaurants and stuff. But it takes a lot of time. It takes longer to get from A to B. You have to build up your advantages in life as you go through. You will build up those things. So you build up your experience, you build up your network, you build up your worth, basically, and that makes things easier because you've done them before. It makes them easier because you've got the money. And there's no reason at all that you can't do that. It's just that it might take you longer than somebody who has an easier road than for you. Get the most out of yourself every day. Find what works for you, whether that's getting up at 6 a.m. or getting up at 11 a.m. Get the most out of yourself. There's only one you. You cannot be replaced. And if you can figure out what works for you and what your strengths are, you can go really far. Too many people waste years of their lives trying to figure that out. Don't be afraid to take a step back or take a step sideways. Be open to new opportunities because you never know where life will take you. The system may fail you, but don't fail yourself. This has been Jen with Gwynne. I'd love to have shown you my apartment and not this virtual background, but it's really, really messy at the moment. So maybe one day. Thanks for watching. And just bear in mind that you never know what's going on in somebody's personal life. I spoke to clients for years, and I wasn't telling them, hey, by the way, if you don't pay me on time, we're not eating as a family. You never know what's going on in somebody's life. So always treat people with kindness. Always reflect that your kindness or the opportunity that you give somebody today might really change their life. And then it gives them the opportunity to help other people later down the road. It's not karma, but it's definitely sort of dropping a stone in water. It will have a ripple effect where now I try and help people because people help me.